Thank you for joining us for Working Through the Word, a ministry of the Richmond Church of Christ. Let's join our pulpit minister, Mike Johnson, as he brings today's lesson.
It happened quite a bit, because if you didn't, you get whooped. They love it when you pay attention. I did a lot of time coaching, and I loved it when we get into a tough situation and we call a timeout and we're in a huddle and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do right now because this is our last chance. This is the only thing we've got. And I love it when the guys are just sitting there looking. They're paying attention. And how many of us fellows know how much our wives appreciate it when they interrupt a ball game and we turn dutifully away and stare them in the eyes and pay attention. Now, we all like it when people pay attention. Think about this, if you will. Why do we call it paying attention? It hit me last night as I was going to sleep, and I thought, why that phrase? And then it occurred to me that every single one of us appreciates it when others are attentive to us. We all, when we're talking, when we're communicating, when we're doing something, every one of us wants someone to give us attention. How many times it may happen today when we finish? A parent is holding a child, and the parent's talking to me, and the child wants to talk to them, and it's a little bit, and then the child just takes the parent's face and pulls it toward them. We all like it. We want people to give us attention. Therefore, you know why we call it paying attention? When we are attentive to others, we are paying for the attention they're going to give us. Pay attention. For a few minutes, I want you to pay attention. Because today, we're going to pay attention. And tonight, we're going to be very practical as we have one of our congregational Bible studies, and we ask the question, how can we help people learn to pay attention? Let's begin with this passage in Philippians chapter 1. I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, making request for you with joy, for your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Paul wrote to the Philippians, and the first thing he said, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for you, my friends. And as this is our week of Thanksgiving thoughts, I want you to notice how when you read the book of Philippians, I want you to think about that first word, thank you. And everything that happens in the book of Philippians is built upon the fact that Paul said to them, I'm thankful for you. Notice what he said in the text. He said, I'm thankful because we have fellowship together. We are in the same place. He said, I'm thankful that And I'm very confident that you're going to continue to develop the way God wants you to. God's working in you. God's working on you. God's working with you. And I am thankful. Now I want you to look at our main text of Philippians chapter 2. And I want to hone in on one of the things for which Paul was thankful concerning the Philippian brethren. Notice what we find beginning in verse 12. Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence. Work out your own fear or your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who works in you both to will and to do according to His good pleasure. Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless, children of God, among whom you shine, are without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. He says, I'm thankful for you, that whether I am with you or I am not, you're who you are. The real test of who we are is not what we show to everybody, but it's what we show to God in our own private moments. And Paul said, sure, I'm your teacher. I've been your mentor. I've taught you. And when I was there, you were doing what's right. And when I'm not there, you just keep it up. Because I know that in doing so, you're working out your own salvation. This is important. It is important for you to take responsibility for yourself, to be right with God. Because God's working there. And look, verse 14. Don't be somebody who is constantly bickering, complaining, and disputing. That's not the life of working out your own salvation. Because Christians are lights in the world. The world is a dark place. And we need for Christians to shine the light in every single place to eradicate the darkness by holding fast the word of life. This word, holding fast, is what I want to think about for just a few minutes. Paul said, I am thankful to you that you are holding fast. And as we think about that word, I want you to think of the word as the phrase, pay attention. For this word, used 4 other times in the New Testament, is about paying attention. Now, there's a kindred word used over 20 times that has the same concept. This word that we're considering is a word that talks about paying attention on the inside where you are. And the other place, the other 20 of another kindred word, is to pay attention while you're here to everything that's out there, meaning the danger part. But we're going to concentrate on this part. Literally, it is hold on to. Pay attention. To do that, I want you to consider with me these passages where it is found. Look at Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14. We're going to consider these 4 other passages as we try to figure out what does it mean to pay attention. And obviously, we're talking about paying attention in spiritual concepts. Luke chapter 14 and verse 7. Here's where the word is used. Speaking of Jesus, so he told a parable to those who were invited when he noted how they chose the best places. Okay, there's a party, a banquet. And these people were invited, and they came to this banquet, and they were pushing and shoving and seeing who could find the best places. Now, the kind of parties that they had, the kinds of get-togethers, in their time, the way it worked was the master of the party sat here. And the places of honor were the ones closest to him. And the farther out that you are, yes, you were invited, and yes, you're a part, but the places of honor are closer to the one running the show. Jesus noted. He paid attention. He's on the inside. He's at the party. He's a part of what's going on. And he noted. To pay attention is to be aware and to see what's really going on. Now, granted, Jesus could read hearts and minds, so he could really see what was going on. But for us, maybe this word is saying, are you taking notes? We take notes on things that mean something to us so that we later can refer to them. We can take mental notes. What's happening? What am I really seeing? Paying attention spiritually. What's really going on? To pay attention is to take note of what we see happening all around us. And it's more than just noticing the surface, but staying engaged in order to understand. Turn to Acts chapter 3. The second use that we're going to consider of this concept. Peter and John came to the temple, and when they got there, there was a man who was begging alms. He had not ever walked in his life. And like he did to everyone else, he said, alms for the poor. He saw Peter and John about to go into the temple, and he asked for alms. Look at verse 4. And fixing his eyes on him with John, Peter said, look at us. Then look at verse 5. So he gave them his attention. To pay attention is to listen. To gaze into that person. Now, there was ulterior motive here that drove his paying attention. What's he going to get? I wondered when I was reading this passage, as a man begging alms, did anybody ever talk to him? Did they just walk by and throw money at him? And all of a sudden, somebody talked to him. Oh, now this person has his attention. He's been accustomed just to hearing coins rattling in his little can. But now somebody actually talked to him. Do you think he wanted to pay attention to that? He'd been overlooked for so long, dismissed by the entire society. And now these guys want to talk to me. Maybe they have something special. When we are paying attention spiritually, it is because we're expecting something special. We're listening. We're engaged. There is a call to this unlike any other call that we might hear. This catches us. This is different. I don't want to miss this. We have to be people. If we are paying attention as God wants us to pay attention, we don't want to miss it. Look at Acts chapter 19 and verse number 22. Because of the things that Paul was teaching, sometimes there were riots in the town and they had to do some things. They had to leave and they had to run off and be in a different place. But look at verse 21. When these things were accomplished, Paul purposed in the Spirit, when he had passed through Macedonia and Achaia, to go to Jerusalem, saying, after I have been there, I must also see Rome. Paul said, I want to go to Jerusalem. I want to go to Rome. I'm going to be right here for now. And then look at verse 22. So he sent into Macedonia 2 of those who ministered to him, Timothy and Erastus. But he himself stayed in Asia for a time. To pay attention is to fulfill your responsibility where you are in that moment. And you let others do what they're supposed to do. When you watch a game, football, basketball. But I'm thinking particularly about how it works, the offensive line on a football team. And the defense is sending in blitzers and people that are trying to cross over each other and confuse the offensive linemen. And what's their job? Do your job. You block where you're supposed to, and you make sure that you do your job and let everyone else do their jobs. Pay attention to yours. God calls us to pay attention to what I'm supposed to do right now. And let others do their jobs. That's what it means to pay attention. The final passage is 1 Timothy chapter 4. And I want you to consider with me, if you will, verse number 16. Paul writing to this young man whom he is mentoring to be a preacher. Look at verse 16. Take heed to yourself and to the doctrine. Continue in them, for in doing this you will save both yourself and those who hear you. Take heed. Listen. Take it in. Let it be a part of you. Notice how he defines it. Continuing in them. A person does not pay attention if they hear a word and then forget it. That's not paying attention. It's not paying attention when you hear the words and then you go over here and do something totally different. You didn't pay attention. I don't know if you've ever been through this before, but I had a teacher in school one time handed out this paper. And she handed the paper and she said, read and do. So the first line said, read the whole thing before you start. Well, people wanted to get finished. And so they went to the first one and they read it and they did it. And they went to the second one and read it and did it. And they just kept going down. And when you get to the last one, it says, do only number 1. Pay attention to the words. Pay attention to what is being said and continue in it. You got to do what you hear. Pay attention. When Paul wrote to the Philippians in chapter 2, he was thankful that they were people who paid attention. Now back to verse 16 of Philippians chapter 2. I pulled out my folder of things that I collect that I want to preach about. And the first thing popped up was a paper in somebody's handwriting here, and I don't know handwriting well enough to know. I'm sure I've recognized it at one time. But earlier this year, somebody sent me a little note, and it said, what about 1 Timothy 4, or Philippians 4 and verse 16, or 2:16? What is about that verse? One version says in verse 16, holding fast. That's what mine says. But another version translates it, holding forth the word of life. This person asked, which is right? They seem different. Holding fast seems to be hang on to it. And holding forth seems to be send it out. Which is right? The word means to pay attention. This may sound like a cop-out, but the answer is they're both right. Because to pay attention, I have to hold on to what I hear and know. I have to hold fast to it. I got to pay attention to me. But I also, in paying attention to God, I have to pay attention to everybody else. Because I need to care about what they know and teaching them what they need. So I pay attention to me, hold fast. And I pay attention to you, hold forth. And it all is founded in the same place, the word of life. Christian people, pay attention. Christian people, hear, hold on to, and spread what God wants us to do. The only question left for you and me, are you paying attention? Are you willing to consider your life? Where am I as I work out my own salvation? What is God telling me? What does God want me to do? And then, am I helping others find their way? Helping them work out their salvation? Pay attention. Jesus said, if you listen to me, you have life within you. Pay attention. And when I pay attention to the life of Jesus, when I pay attention to what Jesus says, then I have to use it all and understand everything he said. And here's what he said to someone recently who said to me, of course, baptism's not important. Oh? You got to listen to Jesus. Oh, yeah. You know, my Bible has red letters in it. Jesus' words. And we turn to Mark 16 where Jesus said, he who believes and is baptized will be saved. Pay attention. If you've not obeyed Jesus, you hadn't paid attention to the point of heeding and doing. And if as a child of God, your life is not where it needs to be, you haven't been paying attention to the point of heeding and doing. Today, pay attention. Can we help you while we stand and sing together?
We hope that you enjoyed today's broadcast, brought to you by the Richmond Church of Christ. We are located at 1500 Lancaster Road in Richmond, Kentucky. We meet at 9 a.m. each Sunday morning for Bible class, followed by our morning worship service held at 10 a.m. Our Sunday evening service is held at 6 p.m. Our midweek Bible study is held on Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you are in the area, we would love to have you as our honored guest. Thanks for listening.